Welcome in to another episode of Betting the Pitch. I believe this is number 218. If you've been with me since the beginning, I appreciate it. I'm your host, real_G Warner, on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you can find me. Also on patreon.com. Check that out. Today, we'll be going through the top 5 European soccer leagues in this episode of Betting the Pitch. Yes, it's a soccer podcast, but there are other baseball, because there is a pitch involved, that show up on the list as well. Also trying to cook up some American football that might be coming up later, but stay tuned for that. Going to go through the top 5 European soccer leagues, going to pick a best bet from each of the leagues, and then come out with an ultimate best bet at the end. I think that's all I probably need to get you ready for. I think for the most part, you all should be. So let's hope that works. And thanks if you've been with me this whole time. I can't say it enough. Thank you for all the support. If you haven't checked out Patreon, I highly recommend it. Patreon.com/real_G Warner. You can get direct access to me, where you can get my leans across all sports, and you can interact with me throughout the day as I write up all my plays and give some numbers on exactly what ranges I'm looking for when locking each play. Download the app, turn on the notifications, you get up to the second updates, and my patrons would tell you that the price is very reasonable. Plus, you get some exclusive content like Friday podcasts that talk about what I'm doing on the soccer front and also the baseball front until we get to the next season, which baseball's been really good this year. College basketball was great last year, hoping that we continue that. And of course, trying to get as many soccer winners on this podcast as always. All lines quoted in this podcast are courtesy of betonline.ag. My favorite place to get my bets down early. Reduced juice is offered on almost every game you want to bet right up until game time. Please follow the link found in this podcast description to fund your account and use the promo code GW50 to receive a 50% match bonus up to $1,000. So now that you have some extra money in your account, let's get right into it. It's time. And let's do the English Premier League. That's where the money is. So with this first matchup on Saturday morning, we have Bournemouth hosting Tottenham. Currently, Bournemouth a half a goal underdog at home. Over under is 3.25, juiced heavily to the under, a little bit of more juice on the Tottenham away side. Bournemouth, they're still a little bit tough for me to predict at this point. I've watched a ton of Andoni Iraola matches from when he was at Rayo Vallecano. They're playing really well in La Liga, and basically are using his same type of format. I think Bournemouth's going to work their way into that. I don't think they have the wingbacks, fullbacks that Rayo do have, and so that makes it a little bit more difficult. And they're in a game here where Tottenham are going to be really using their wingbacks, and they're going to be attacking all over the pitch. I think it's why you see a total at 3.25, very, very high number, but a reasonable one at that. And I feel like it's going to be a little bit more complicated for Tottenham on the road this year, where they're playing without getting much from Richarlison. And I think with Maddison's potential injury, I'm not sure about his status as he left the last match. It was, I think, pictured or videoed with a walking boot. That's never a good sign, but we never really know what the answer is. They're always precautionary until they're not. We'll see if he's in that lineup, because he's a really important part and piece of the Tottenham offense. If he's not there, I become more and more interested in Bournemouth getting that half of a goal. I'm probably not going to play a single under with Tottenham this year. Bournemouth getting a half, though, are very interesting. Next, I'll move to Arsenal hosting Fulham. Arsenal, a 1.75 goal favorite with all the juice. Likely climbing to 2 before this kicks off. Over under is 3.25, juice to the under. Fulham are really going to have trouble this year. I mean, that felt like last weekend was a dead under. Unfortunately, there was a really bad mistake towards the end of the first half by Issa Diop, who I think was Fulham got him because West Ham didn't want him, even though he's supposed to be the future for the West Ham center backs. Instead, they opted for older players they trusted more. Maybe that was a little bit of foreshadowing for that mistake. But Fulham also fell apart once Tim Ream got a second yellow, the United States international. And then when he was off the pitch, conceded a penalty, got on the same play, got a second yellow for a red card. He's suspended for this matchup. That's going to be really tough, because Arsenal are going to be going at them like crazy, especially at home. Arsenal have not looked great this year. I don't really trust them to win matches significantly. They let Nottingham Forest into the first matchup, if I remember who they played correctly, and then really didn't have a ton of control with Crystal Palace, and got very fortunate that there was no penalty called on Thomas Partey in the second half. So it's a big number at 2. I'm more interested in at Fulham, so I don't have that yet. It's probably not for me. And I also do still like unders with Fulham, because I don't believe that they can score. I think that makes it really hard for me to back them, even getting 2 goals. in the same city. I guess it's across town ish because Fulham are West London, Arsenal are North. But I guess, and I'm probably put this on the list. Fulham under 3.25. I don't necessarily believe in Arsenal just so far just yet. They've got a lot of weight in their shoulders, a lot of expectations, and I think it's gonna be tough for them to live up to them. Everton then host Wolves. Everton a quarter goal favorite at home with almost all the juice on Wolf on the road. Over unders 2.5, juice heavily the under, and that's a good reason. Wolves looked really bad this past weekend, had a pretty quiet first half, no goals, and then were really blitzed as soon as Brighton came out of the halftime locker room, teacups being thrown or whatever De Zerbi was doing in there. It worked. Wolves kind of matriculated. They got a second yellow from frustration from a midfielder, so that's not good. Mateus, I believe. That's probably not a huge loss, but I still have questions on how Wolves are going to score. I think I'm more interested in the under 2.5 here than backing Wolves themselves, but ultimately the Everton side, I mean, they looked so poor in their game last weekend as well. They don't really have any sort of goal scoring ability. It looked like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, if he didn't get a shiner, it looked like he might have broken an orbital bone. I don't think he can play with a broken face, but ultimately Everton are a side that I'm playing unders or against. I don't think I really see a situation where I'm backing them unless they're a home underdog. Clearly not the case here, so I like under 2.5. Next, go to Brentford hosting Crystal Palace. Currently, Brentford a quarter goal favorite at home with almost all the juice. Over unders 2.25, juiced to the under a little bit more than, or about halfway more juice. If that's a way to say it. Crystal Palace were pretty competitive against Arsenal. The market seemed to like them. Also liked under. Both those sides nearly hit. Crystal Palace could have hit. Who knows if that penalty goes in? What the heck happens to the over under? But Palace are not a team I believe to score. It seems like an Eze or bust type of team at this point. Just give him the ball, get out of the way. Kind of the Wilfried Zaha technique or strategy, which makes sense because Roy Hodgson's been the manager there for like a million times in a million different forms or stages. Brentford have been awesome though. They got that late goal against Fulham to kill my under bet. But we're really good defensively. I think they always are. They're always seemingly smarter than the teams they're playing. I don't see Crystal Palace as some analytics guru type of club either. So it feels really weird that Crystal Palace are only a quarter goal because it basically says, based on my home field assumption, that each home field is worth a quarter of a goal. That yes, there's more juice in the Brentford side, but I think this should be a lot higher than it is right now. So that does make me more interested in Brentford than I think I would usually be. I think I like the plus 116, the money line to win in regulation. If that's somewhere you want to go, get some plus money on, I think, a better team, and they're at home. Manchester United then host Nottingham Forest. Currently, Manchester United 1.5 goal favorite with all the juice. Over under is 3, juice the over. Manchester United have been probably the worst team versus expectations in the Premier League so far this season. Nottingham Forest were really bad on the road last year, partly because they were so good at home that there's huge home and away splits. But this is a big step for Manchester United to show that they actually can get it going. They had a really bad start to the beginning of the Erik ten Hag reign last season. It then ended up turning very well towards the end of the season, but still, I think had plenty left to be desired. They're playing Marcus Rashford at striker. I wonder if he returns to the left wing where he really wants to play and has made that apparently abundantly clear. But they're still playing him out of position. I wonder if that changes. With that said, I think my biggest interest in this one is really not necessarily on Nottingham Forest to score. So, but I do think they can hang with Manchester United. So I like under 3. It's currently getting odds and might even climb to 3.25 before this kicks off. The last one on Saturday is Brighton hosting West Ham. Currently, Brighton a 1-goal favorite with all the juice right now. Over is 3.25, juiced all the way to the over. Might be hitting 3.5. Might be hitting 1.25. Gigantic numbers for Brighton, who I got to say, I think I've reached a point where I'm not going to play their unders anymore. They score late goals if they haven't sent it over already. West Ham are a gigantic underdog here, though. I have to take that into consideration, the full goal of insurance, which might get to 1.25 by the time this kicks off. It just seems to me that this number is way too big, but it's based on Bournemouth being as talented as they are, and ultimately playing a great start to the season. So we'll see what that all means. I still lean to West Ham, and I guess I like under, but like I just said, I'm swearing them off. Sheffield United then host Manchester City in the early one on Sunday. Chef U, a 2-goal underdog at home, a little more juice to the Man City side. Over under is 3, juice to the over. Sheffield United have not looked competitive so far this season. I'm not interested in backing them, even at home with a huge crowd behind them. Manchester City has run into that before and has dominated teams before. If anything, if you want to play something here, I think under 3 makes the most sense, but that's sort of backing the Sheffield United defense, which I'm not prepared to do. Burnley then hosts Aston Villa, I guess, still in this window. Burnley, a 1/4 goal underdog at home, even money. So all the juice on Aston Villa on the road, coming off a Europa Conference League first leg qualification playoff, which they seem to dispatch Hibernian, as at least from what I saw, or Hibs, or whatever they're called. Over under is 2.5, juiced all the way to the over. Might be seeing 2 3/4 before it kicks off. I'm still not really a believer in the Aston Villa offense. I see Emery as a defensive coach. That's probably my biggest interest, though. Burnley are an offensive team under Vincent Kompany. In previous lives under Sean Dyche, I think this is a dead under here, but I don't necessarily feel that way here. And I think Burnley need to prove that they're a good enough team at this level. They haven't done that yet. Aston Villa have proven that they're very good. And Burnley, they did get the week off last week because Luton Town's stadium wasn't ready, but I'm just not sure that's enough for me just yet to go speculate. And last but not least, in England, before I give you an ultimate or a selection that will come up later in the ultimate best bet, Newcastle, a 1/4 goal favorite at home to Liverpool. The weird speculation about Mo Salah leaving potentially is odd and weird, as I just said. Doesn't seem like it's going to happen, and it seems like he's going to play this weekend, but you never know. Newcastle currently 1/4 goal favorite, more of the juice. Over under is 3 1/4, juiced pretty heavily to the under. Liverpool are not a team I can play an under with. They don't really seem to care to defend. They just want to outscore you. Yes, the results have been not going in the over direction as much so far to start the season. Newcastle will do a lot, I think, to thwart the Liverpool offense, but I think this will ultimately give a lot of spaces for Newcastle to score goals. I'm still not a believer in them offensively. I think they're a solid team, but really are not one to dominate. And I feel like Liverpool is probably worth a look. I just don't trust Liverpool. I don't trust teams that don't care for defense going on the road, really. So that's something I'll probably lay off of on, I guess, the last match on Sunday. So for my best bet from England, I'm going to go to Wolves under 2.5. I think that is going to be a potential 0-0. Go to sleep. You don't really want to see it happen type of matchup. Next, we'll go to La Liga in Spain. We have Cadiz hosting Almeria in the first match on Saturday. Cadiz, a 1/4 goal favorite at home with almost all the juice on Almeria on the road. Over under is 2 1/4, juice to the under, or excuse me, juice to the over. Might be climbing to 2.5 before this kicks off. That's a pretty big total for Cadiz. They are an under team by all stretches of imaginations. If you have one, if you don't. From my perspective, Almeria have been a really bad defense, especially on the road, which does make me not have really much interest in getting a 1/4 goal with them, especially because I think Cadiz are a much better offense than they have been ever since they came up to La Liga. I think I'm going to wait for 2.5 to pop, but I do have some interest in any sort of under with Cadiz because I don't even know that they're really going to punish Almeria and a poor road defense that Almeria employs. Granada then hosts Mallorca, and this is I guess the second matchup, only 30 minutes later because they're trying to play all the matches as late as possible to avoid the heat in Spain, especially in southern Spain where Granada is located. Granada currently a pick 'em with almost all the juice. Over under is 2 with all the juice on under. Might be seeing a 1 3/4 before this kicks off. Granada have not looked like they're at the races in the top division after being promoted to from La Segunda División. Mallorca are a great defensive side. They're going on the road and they're going to make it really hard for Granada to score. I think my only interest here is the under 2, but it looks like it's not going to stick around for too long. So if you like that, play it. Mallorca plus a 1/4 would be on my potentials, but it's not there yet. Sevilla then hosts Girona in the nightcap in Spain. All of these played, I think, under darkness. Sevilla, a 1/4 goal favorite with all the juice at home. Over under is 2.5, juice to the under. Sevilla have not gone off to a great start. Had the distraction of the UEFA Super Cup where they lost in penalties to Manchester City. I don't think that matters too much, but they gave it their all. They tried their best. I like Girona. I think they were a better team than Sevilla last year. I don't think it's a big stretch of the imagination to think that they make this really hard for Sevilla to win again, who have not, and especially because Sevilla have not won yet. I think I expect this to be a low-scoring matchup, but it's really hard to play unders with Sevilla because unless they're going to be hugely dominated by their competition, because Jose Luis Mendilibar is not a defensive coach. He's going to play a high line and try to press up the pitch and give up a lot of room. So Girona or nothing for me on the side, I guess. Moving to Sunday, Villarreal hosts Barcelona in the early matchup. Currently, Villarreal a half a goal underdog at home with all the juice. Over unders 2 3/4, juice to the over. Barcelona have not looked great so far this year. Had a couple late goals against Cadiz at home that really got them their first victory after drawing in a goalless draw at Getafe. Villarreal are not going to play that way. They're going to be very aggressive offensively and try to outscore Barcelona. I don't love that setup for Villarreal. And it's really hard because I've been playing unders with Barcelona for a long time. And I don't think anything here is worth it to me, as I think Barcelona will show in an open game how good they are and potentially set them off on the right track, potentially moving forward. Valencia then hosts Osasuna. Currently, Valencia a half a goal favorite at home with more of the juice. Over unders 2 1/4, juiced heavily to the under, or all of the juices on the under, or maybe it falls to 2. Valencia off to a great start with 2 wins to start the season. Didn't have that in my bingo card. I don't think a lot of people did. But perfect time for them to be overvalued, especially because I don't trust their defense. I don't think their offense is very good. Osasuna are in a little bit weird place considering they lost a qualification match for the UEFA Conference League at home to Club Rouge from Belgium. I don't know if it's Brugge or Bruges. I assume English will always pronounce it wrong, but someone correct me if you're listening. Currently, Osasuna half a goal favorite. That's too big. I backed them last weekend at home, and they got off to a poor start against Athletic Club and never really were able to take advantage of their opportunities. Fell behind 2-0, and that was pretty much that. I think they're going to have a really good effort. They're not going to have Chimi Avila, who played the whole matchup on Thursday, and this is a fairly early Sunday matchup, but I guess thank God it's not Saturday. But from my perspective, Valencia are overvalued. I want to be against them as much as I can this season. And that's pretty much where I'm at. So I like Osasuna getting a half of a goal. Next, we have Athletic Club hosting Real Betis. Currently, Athletic a half a goal favorite at home with the juice split both ways. Over unders 2.5, juice to the under. Athletic Club are still not a team that I believe will score goals, especially not in San Mamés where they're given a lot of credit like they will. It's a tough place to play. Real Betis have had a great run of games, results, successes there in Bilbao. I think they knocked them out of the cup. I think they won last year and won an embarrassing fashion in that cup matchup, if I remember correctly. Real Betis with a good defensive performance at home against Atletico Madrid in a real paint dry type of matchup. I don't know that I love under here as much as I like the side, but I don't think that's a terrible idea, especially when I don't believe in the home favorite to score a lot of goals. Their over team total is 1.5. I would go under that on Athletic Club as well. Who knows what happens in game stories and if Betis take a big lead, what that means. But Real Betis getting a half of a goal seems very interesting to me, as well as pretty much anything anti-Athletic Club at this point. Moving to Monday, Getafe host Alaves. Currently, Getafe a quarter goal favorite at home with more juice on Alaves, and then over under is 1 3/4, juice to the under. Welcome to a Getafe matchup. I don't believe in them. I don't like them as a favorite. So therefore, Alaves getting a quarter of a goal are automatically on my list. I'm not going to play an under 1 3/4 though. And last but not least, Rayo Vallecano hosts Atletico Madrid. Currently, Rayo a half a goal underdog at home with all the juice. Over under is 2 1/4, juiced a little bit to the over, very slightly, just 1 cent, 2 cent spread. So Rayo, off to a great start. You could argue that maybe it's not fully deserved, but I think they've been great. They are really tough at home in that small pitch. Atleti, who were so good to finish last season, haven't really had a great start to this year. Didn't play that well against Granada and seemed to pile up goals late after the result was kind of decided. Didn't really do anything against Real Betis in a very boring matchup. I'm very interested in Rayo. I love them as a home dog. I think there's a little bit better situation for them than Osasuna or Real Betis, who are going on the road. So I'll give Rayo getting a half of a goal as my best bet from Spain. And I'll summarize these all and make a pick for the best one or the ultimate one at the end of the show. Next, we'll move to Italy. We have Frosinone hosting Atalanta. Currently, Frosinone a 3/4 goal underdog at home. All the juice on Atalanta on the road, almost. Over unders 2 3/4, juice to the over. Frosinone didn't look like they were very competitive despite taking a lead against Napoli in the opener. I am going to wait and see them be competitive first. Atalanta didn't look great either. I think I would need a +1 until I get involved here, and it's really hard to play unders with Atalanta. Monza then hosts Empoli. Monza, a half a goal favorite with more juice on Empoli on the road. Over unders 2.5, juiced heavily to the under, might fall to 2.25 before this kicks off. Monza were fairly disappointing. They lost a lot of players. Unfortunately, I was kind of under the impression that they kept the important ones, but they did lose some wing backs that were clearly more integral to their attack than I thought, though they did play Inter Milan in their opener. I imagine they will eventually get up to speed, but that has not happened yet. Empoli on their side have also been losing players left and right, hand over fist, whatever the phrase would be. Not a lot for me to want to do with this one because I think Monza are an offensive team, so it's really hard for me to want to play under. AC Milan then hosts Torino. Currently Milan, a 3/4 goal favorite with almost all the juice, or a little bit more of the juice, excuse me. Over unders 2.25, juice slightly more to over. Torino look like a side that we've always expected them to be. Not a lot of goals in them. They're going to try to protect their defense by having the ball as much as possible. Milan might let them do that for a while, but they're also going to catch them in some traps with their pressing. And I expect Milan had a really good showing in their opener. I don't know necessarily that they'll be able to follow that up, but that was on the road and this is at home, so it should be better. I think Torino, I need a full goal of insurance to play them. And Milan, with a great start, clearly can score goals, so I don't think I like under either. Verona then hosts Roma. Verona currently a 0.5 goal underdog at home with almost all the juice on Roma on the road. Over unders 2.25, juiced all the way to the under. Might see a 2, which feels very low for Roma, especially after seeing a 4-goal output in their first matchup. Roma were the victim of Candreva, who had 2 great goals for Salernitana. It was, I think, the first time that Andre Belotti had scored for Roma and scored in Serie A in over a year, but got 2 goals and nearly got a third one late. If he didn't cramp up, maybe he would have found the back of the net. Roma were fortunate to get a header from him, I think, after a corner was not deserved, but them's the breaks, especially home teams. And of course, there's match fixing in the past in Serie A, hopefully not now. I don't think Verona, they're going to have to prove it after how bad they were last season for me to want to get involved with them, even at home. Juventus then hosts Bologna, currently Juve, a 1-goal favorite, who played really well in their opener. Bologna really didn't look like they had much firepower, especially after falling behind fairly early to Milan. Over unders 2.5, juice slightly to the under. I think I like under, if anything, just based on the way that Massimo Allegri likes to play. And if he takes a lead, he likes to knock the air out of the ball, essentially, and not really go for attacks. What that would then mean is I'm back in the Bologna defense, but I don't feel that bad about really what it almost feels like is betting against both of these offenses. Juve have certainly a lot more talent. Chiesa looked really good, and he's probably the most important player to them. As a 1-goal underdog on the road, that does make me feel like there's some big risk for late goals, but I'll put Bologna under 2.5 on my list. Fiorentina then hosts Lecce. Currently Fiorentina a 3/4 goal favorite with almost all the juice. Over under is 2.5 or 2.25, excuse me, with all the juice likely headed to 2.5. Lecce played really well, had a huge comeback win against Lazio at home in their opener, something they didn't really do last year, and probably would have been safe from the drop earlier if they had. But they played a lot of close matches at home. Certainly a team I want to back there. It's going to be a little bit more challenging going on the road to Florence or Firenze, but ultimately Fiorentina had a match in midweek that they had to, I think, travel to Wien or to Vienna, and lost to Rapid Wien, who are, I think, were a big underdog against them. So certainly maybe some anger motivation potentially for Fiorentina here, but also some tired legs. So very interested in Lecce. I want to see if they climb to 1 goal, though, so they're not just there yet. But I mean, certainly could be on the path maybe at some point, but likely not going to be included in my best bet from Italy. Napoli then hosts Sassuolo. Currently Napoli a 1.5 goal favorite with more juice on them at home. Over under 3.25, juice slightly to the over. Napoli, and it's a big question on whether they can repeat the Scudetto or as champions from last season. They lost a lot of players. They still retained some, but Sassuolo looks like they didn't have anything to give in that first matchup against Atalanta. They're missing their heart and soul, their talisman in Domenico Berardi, who looks like he's going to move, but I haven't seen if that's confirmed just yet. Over under 3.25, it looks pretty high, but Sassuolo is not really a side you expect to play defense, so not a lot for me to do there with an underdog I don't really like. Lazio then hosts Genoa. Currently Lazio 1-goal favorite, all the juice on Genoa on the road. Over under is 2.25, juice the over very heavily. Maybe we see 2.5. This is really feels like a line that's talking about the Lazio collapse, maybe, but more about Genoa and not being sure that they're really at the level of Serie A being a newly promoted. I don't know that I want to bet on that just yet. usually takes teams that are recently promoted or newly promoted with huge financial differences from other clubs that it's going to take them a little while. Moving to Monday, Salernitana host Udinese. Currently, Salernitana a pick'em at home with almost all the juice on Udinese on the road. Actually, over unders 2.5, juice heavily or fully to under. Might see a 2.25 cup here. I don't know that I distrust the Salernitana offense as much as I did towards last season until Bula Diaz stepped up and scored a ton of goals. Candreva was so good against Roma. We'll see if they can kind of match that performance. They deserved, I think, all 3 points, but did take a point in the capital, which is pretty huge for them. Udinese have not really looked anywhere near as good as they were to the start last season. They were on fire, and it's really been downhill since then. Same manager still around, so there's some questions there. I'm most interested in Salernitana if they get to quarter of a goal, but they're not there yet, so we'll wait and see on that one. And last but not least, Cagliari hosts Inter Milan. Currently, Cagliari a 1.25 goal favorite with all the juice right now at home. Inter are a great team and probably could do whatever they want with this side, even on the island. Over under is 2.75, juiced to the over. I don't think there's a lot for me there on Cagliari. It's another kind of wait and see situation to make sure that they are capable. And so for my best bet for Serie A for this weekend, I'm going to go with the Bologna under 2.5. Next, I'll move to the German Bundesliga, and we'll start on Saturday morning in that big onslaught of matches. And we'll start with Darmstadt, a 0.5 goal underdog at home to Union Berlin. All the juice is on the home team, and over under is 2.25, juice all the way to the over as well. Union had 3-headed goals from a kind of rare goal scorer who started at striker for them last weekend, and Kevin Behrens, whatever it is, Behrens, I think. Union go on the road, they'll play the same style, which is to keep their opponent from scoring, and I think that points to under here. I'm interested if it climbs to 2.5 more than I am at 2.25, though I'm still fairly interested there as well. Darmstadt didn't look like they had a lot in their tank from what I had seen, but we'll see if they can make a response to that in their second match in the Bundesliga. Heidenheim then hosts Hoffenheim. Currently, Heidenheim, another newly promoted, a 0.25 goal underdog at home with more of the juice. Over under is 3, all the way juice to the under. Might see 2.75 before this kicks off. Hoffenheim with a poor start, though they were playing fairly well against Freiburg, and then Freiburg took a lead, then scored again, and then Hoffenheim were almost, they got a fairly fortunate goal themselves, a lot of fortunate goals in that matchup, and then couldn't seem to get an equalizer. But Hoffenheim should be the better side here. Heidenheim need to prove that they can play at this level. I don't believe in them yet. Köln then hosts Wolfsburg, currently Köln a 0.25 goal favorite at home, which makes little sense to me based on how much they lost in their offseason and really what their squad value is worth right now. Over under is 2.75, juiced to the over. Wolfsburg are a very expensive, fully juiced quarter on the road, but I really like what they've done in the transfer market. I don't like what Köln has. Köln will have a huge crowd support, but that hasn't really mattered when they were nearly getting relegated a couple seasons ago. I'm worried about Steffen Baumgart's team, worried about his job potentially. They played really well and fought really hard against Dortmund, but were not able to score and gave up a late goal, really fortunate miss kick. But I think it might be a really, really bad start for them. And I like that under 2.75 as well, because I think Wolfsburg is really built on playing good defense. I do like the side better. Freiburg then hosts Werder Bremen. Freiburg a 3/4 goal favorite with more of the juice on their side. Over under is 2.75, juice all the way over. I don't believe in that over at all. I'm certainly going to wait and see if a 3 pops. It's also hard to play unders in the Bundesliga, considering how many goals are being scored. There were an average of 4 per match last weekend. There still, I think, are some under teams here, but I'm going to be a lot more careful with that moving forward. I still like this one because I just don't believe Werder Bremen are capable of scoring, but I want that 3, I think, based on the amount of scoring that's happened in the Bundesliga. Next, I'll move to Bochum hosting Borussia Dortmund, a Rhineland derby, though means a lot more to Bochum than it does to Dortmund. Probably about 30 minutes or so from each other. I went drinking in Bochum. I was hoping to party, but I didn't really find much there, unfortunately. Bochum, a 1.25 goal underdog at home with all the juice on Dortmund on the road. Over under is 3.5, and it's slightly juiced to the under. I'm still not a believer in Dortmund. I think they're still licking their wounds from blowing the title last season. I mean, maybe that's not the case, but I feel like Meisterschale hangover could be a thing. They look terrible against Köln at home, and it's not really facing a good team. So I don't know. I don't expect much from them. But I do like Bochum getting more than a goal at home. They looked horrible in the opener as well, though. So it might be one of those I need to wait and see to make sure that they are still at the level that they have been in the past. Because it took them a while to start get a new manager in, and then they started playing a lot better at home. We're still a disaster on the road. But a 5-0 loss to Stuttgart in the opener is a pretty big mar on your ledger. Borussia Mönchengladbach then host Bayer Leverkusen. Gladbach a half a goal underdog at home. A little bit more juice on Leverkusen on the road. Over just 3.25. Juice heavily the under, or all the way to the under. I can't play unders right now with Gladbach. I don't really want to do anything but fade them. Leverkusen are not a side I really respect completely. It seems like a lot of people are talking about the potentially winning the Meisterschale. I would say pump the brakes on that one. They were very fortunate, despite a 2-0 and 3-1 lead, to really escape with a victory on Leipzig last weekend. I don't know. Not a lot for me to do there, though, ultimately. And now moving to Sunday, Mainz 05 host Eintracht Frankfurt. Currently, Mainz a quarter goal favorite at home with all the juice on Frankfurt on the road. Over-under is 2.75, split juice both ways. This is a derby, a Mainz derby, I think, then, or Hesse, or whatever it is. Maybe the rivalry matters a little bit. I like Eintracht Frankfurt getting that quarter of a goal. They've had a lot of talent leave, unfortunately, but I still believe in them. And I think that they can make this really hard on Mainz, who did not look good in the opener. I think they will be a lot better in this second matchup. But there's a lot of questions for me about Mainz and their goal scoring. Their defense is usually good because they're physical. I don't know that that's always the best game plan, though, especially if refs are going to be a lot more sensitive this year. And last but not least, Bayern München host Augsburg, and Bayern are a 3-goal favorite. Almost all the juice on Augsburg on the road. Over there's 4.25 juice the over. I want to play under here, but I'm so sick of Augsburg at this point that I don't really want anything to do with them. This might be one of those matches where Harry Kane really announces his arrival in the Bundesliga. Move to Ligue 1, and then we'll wrap this all up with an ultimate best bet. Marseille hosts Brest, Stade Brestois in the opener on Saturday. Marseille 1-goal favorite with a little bit more juice. Over unders 2.75, juice slightly to the under. Stade Brestois have been awesome. I think they're top of the table at this point, 2 wins out of 2. It's unlikely that'll continue, but Marseille have been really bad. Crashed out of the Champions League playoff round, didn't even get through a first round. I think they had to get through 2 and didn't even get through the first. Losing to Panathinaikos on penalties, the Greek team, who are not even the biggest one there. Disappointing, and now they got to win by 2 goals to take my money. So I'm very interested in Brestois. It's going to be hard for them because they lost a lot of players. Frank Onrath leaving for Gladbach was a big subtraction. But they know what they need to do, and that's to play defense. And Marseille are going to have to play a solid match, and that's hard for me to see. Certainly waiting to see if I get more than one. The juice is certainly headed that way. PSG then hosts Lens. Currently PSG a 1-goal favorite with all the juice on Lens on the road. Over unders 2.75, juice all the way to the over. PSG finally get a more full lineup with likely Dembele and Mbappe both starting. I still question what the season's going to look like for Mbappe, especially because his heart and mind are elsewhere. He got his wish, he's staying, and then he's going to leave and go to Real Madrid, I think, in the summer. But Lens, they've had a great start to the season, great first half, and then conceded a penalty right at the end, and then 2 more goals in the second half. So a 2-0 lead turned into a 3-2 loss. And then they deserved to win, I think, against Stade Rennais. Were controlling the first half and then really kind of didn't have a great second half. Lens are going to have to step up because they got Champions League to distract them this year. They need to earn points, and I think they're going to be in PSG's face. They're going to be aggressive, play the way they should. Road fans should be big, and PSG, who knows what the fans are going to be like with 2 points for 2 matches, which is far below their expectations. Moving to Sunday, Rennes host Le Havre in the opener. Rennes a 1.25 goal favorite with over under at 2.75. She's heavily to the under. Surprised, I expect this to be an over here. So I almost like over 2.75, though I'm not an over player. Le Havre, they're going to have a tough time hanging with Rennes on the road, who play so well at home. Montpellier then hosts Reims. Currently Montpellier a quarter goal favorite at home. All the juice on Reims on the road. Over unders 2.75, juice the under. I love Montpellier. They were a very easy bet last weekend. Probably one of my favorites. I wish I had labeled that for France. But ultimately, I think that they are a lot stronger. Ever since they added Michel Dizarkarian, I think is their new manager, came in last season. They've been a lot better in my humble opinion, and I think that they are going to be better a lot for this season. So we'll see what that ends up turning into, but they were great to close last season and seemed to pick up right where they left off. Rems are good, but I don't know that I really like them, and I feel like they're overpriced as a very juiced. Might fall to pick them soon. It almost makes me interested in the home team Montpellier if I can get them at a pick. Strasbourg and then host Toulouse. Currently, Strasbourg a quarter goal favorite after a pretty bad showing at Monaco. With more of the juice at home, over unders 2 3/4, juiced heavily the under. It's weird to see the under juiced so heavily considering Strasbourg's defensive issues. What they brought in is a fair amount of talent with the new money that came in, as that like they're a minor league squad of Chelsea, it seems. Toulouse, they lost a lot of talent though. That speaks to a little bit to this total. I feel like they're a side I'd normally want to back if they were a full strength squad from what they played with last year, but they lost a lot, and that's going to be a big question. So it's more of a watch and see, I think, for that one. Clermont Foot then hosts Metz in Clermont. So they're a half goal favorite. Over under is 2.5. Juice heavily the over, slightly more juice on Metz on the road. Metz are awesome, especially after falling down to 10 men to come back from 1-0 down to Marseille at home, which helps, but they scored a goal and then scored another goal and almost won. I think Clermont as a half a goal favorite is too big. So I like Metz. I think a half of a goal is probably about right, maybe a little big. We'll see where this number moves. I don't know that I trust Metz defense completely so far to play under 2.5, but I also like that under as well now that I think about it, because it's getting even money right now, and Clermont Foot are a side that scores on penalties, or it's really hard to see them scoring. Next, we have Lorient hosts Lille. Currently, Lorient a half a goal favorite at home. With more of the juice, over unders 2.5, juice all the way to the over. Lille are a very offensive side, and they're going to do their best to control the ball and put shots on net, essentially pucks in deep, if you excuse the hockey reference. They're going to put a lot of pressure on Lorient, but Lorient are a team that I love, and I've been backing them for years now. They were pretty fortunate, I guess you could say, to win my ultimate best bet last weekend, but they did it. I think that they can hang with Lille. They were only a quarter goal underdog to Nice. Now they're half to Lille, which makes sense because Lille are better, but Lille also had to play midweek. Lost a center back, I think, to injuries. So I got a lot of questions there. Certainly don't want to play an under with Lille because they're always on the front foot, but I like Lorient getting a half of a goal in front of what should be a big crowd. And last but not least, Nice hosts Lyon. Currently Nice a quarter goal favorite at home with more of the juice, over unders 2 3/4, juice heavily to the over. This probably should hit 3. I don't trust Nice really at all. I think Lyon have plenty of problems. They're really just fully all in on the youth movement, which is a little bit problematic, scary. And any of those words probably fit. I like Lyon getting that quarter of a goal, but we'll ultimately see if that's worth the price. I think my ultimate best bet my best bet for France, and then we'll ultimately get through to the ultimate best bet later in the show. I don't know if I did that for Germany. Apologies if I just skipped past that, but I like Lorient getting that half of a goal. And now I'll summarize it all and hopefully get us all out of here right away. So I guess if I haven't mentioned it already, if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. If I see a comment, I'll look it up right now. I will read it. And 5-star reviews help with the search ratings and things of that nature. So that would be really helpful. I don't see anything new, so someone get on there, do that, please. I know a lot of more of you are subscribing to my Patreon. Appreciate that, of course, and then also to YouTube is great. Keep going on there if you are. Check out Patreon if you want. Pretty much all my picks all in one place. That's the best way to do it. Patreon.com/thereal_G Warner. So let me just make sure I got all this going. I think I do. And all right, so hey, this is @real_G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon. This is Betting the Pitch number 218, and it's time for the ultimate best bet. From England, I'm going Wolves under 2.5 goals. In Spain, Rayo Vallecano getting a half of a goal. In France, I go with Lorient, a half a goal underdog. In Germany, Wolfsburg getting a quarter of a goal at Cologne. And last but not least, in Serie in Italy, I'll go Bologna under 2.5. And for my ultimate best bet, which was a winner last weekend on Lorient at home, I'm tempted to pick them again, especially because they're showing up in here. But I'm going to go instead with VfL Wolfsburg, a quarter goal underdog on the road at FC Köln. I've got big questions about Köln and what they're going to look like this season. I've always really questioned ever since last season their ability to score goals. And Wolfsburg did a lot of business in the transfer market, brought in a lot of talent. They've got a great manager who's been really good for them in the past. Or in past locations as well, coached Bayern Munich and Monaco. So take Wolfsburg getting a quarter goal, and this will be ultimate best bet, hopefully 2 in a row. And that'll do it for this episode of Betting the Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the support. As always, follow me on Twitter, slide some DMs, twitter.com/real_G_Warner. Anywhere, any place there's something gambling related, or you can interact with me, slide in some DMs, and I'll check them as religiously as I possibly can and get back to you as soon as I can as well. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you all soon.